Hey, what's going on, everybody? Alex with you here again. It's good to see everybody back, as usual. I think it's been a couple of weeks since I've posted my last video. I've just had a lot of things going on and really haven't had anything to post, any new updates. I've been trying to get that electronic chessboard for a while now, but for some reason the electronic chessboards are like super duper expensive, and the chess distributors, from what it seems, are having a pretty large markup for, I don't know why, on those electronic chessboards. So my DGT Pi chess clock has been just sitting there waiting for that e-board to finally be purchased, but I haven't really had that opportunity. But anyways, kind of to brief you guys about the updates, as far as the previous video with the square off chessboard, I was able to return it, no problems whatsoever. House of Staunton was super cool about it and just told me to go ahead and package it and send it back. So that was that, but it did take a little bit of time to get that sent, and then taxes were due last month, and knowing me, the procrastinator that I am, I ended up just waiting till the very last minute to get everything done. So it's just been a busy month overall, May. But finally we're getting close to June, and hopefully the weather is gonna warm up. But as of now, like 8 o'clock in the morning, it's really chilly, as you could see out here. So anyways, so I got a brand new chess set that I was really excited to show you guys. The chess set that I was able to get with the refund that I got from the square off chessboard. They gave me a couple of options. They said we can send you another square off board, or we can just refund you the money. So I figured, let's go ahead and refund me. So I ended up putting together some discounts, and I got this chess set, these chess pieces. This is the Turin chess set that's sold on the House of Staunton. This particular chess set's really great. I looked at it. The price of this particular chess set was $5.95 or $5.99, something, so close to 600. This particular set is a 4.4-inch king, and I'll show you guys up close. It did come with two different wood varieties, the ebony and also blood rosewood, which is also a padok wood. So one of the things that I do want to mention as far as wood quality is when you're getting into some of the more elaborate, some of the more expensive chess sets, especially ones where the knights are going to be having a lot more details, then they tend to eliminate some of the lower quality woods as options. And like when you look at, like, for example, the Reykjavik chess set, they will offer you pretty much any type of wood variety that you're looking for, but that's because the Reykjavik, the knights are going to be a lot more subtle. There's no elaborate details on the knights, so there's nothing that could potentially break off, and nothing that could potentially break off during processing. However, when you're dealing with like more detailed knights, more detailed pieces, if you're taking wood that's going to be a lot more porous, a lot weaker, a lot harder to be able to hold in those finer details, then they would generally even eliminate those options, and they would stick with just like more dense wood, like genuine ebony, blood rosewood. Just because if they're gonna make a chess set, well, first of all, if you take for example, golden rosewood that has a lot of pores in it, if you're going to start processing the wood, you're going to start to create those details. There's only so close that they can make one cut right next to the next cut before those cuts become one cut, because the wood, being that it's so porous and kind of a little bit weaker, it's not going to hold those details in. That's one. And two is, when you do order that particular chess set, it's going to probably end up being to where those little details are going to be a lot more likely to break off, or to get damaged during everyday use. So with that being said, like, if you are searching for a slightly more elaborate chess set, you will notice that in the higher price range chess sets, you're only going to be getting the options of doing like ebony, blood rosewood for the most part. That seems to be the pattern. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this particular chess set. The packaging of this set is supreme as usual. They do a great job. This are gonna be the dark pieces here. Everything's been packaged really nicely. This kind of reminds me of the Modena chess set that I've already reviewed on my previous video, as far as the quality and as far as like what the knights look like. And price-wise, the Modena chess set's about the same, about $500–600. This particular chess set came with the certificate in a large envelope. It did come with a certificate of authenticity stamped by the House of Staunton, and it also came with like a little golden plaque sticker that basically says the Turin chess set, genuine, and then it gives you the date, like year 2021. So that way you can take that sticker. I think it has like a sticky part on the back, and if you have a really nice chess box, to be able to kind of stick that right underneath the lid and give you information about the pieces themselves. So it's just a really nice touch. When I purchased the Modena chess set, as I've previously alluded to, it was in the imperfect section, so it wasn't new. Then again, I mean, I only had to pay about $190 for it. But it didn't come with a certificate. But I'm sure, just by looking at how similar this set is to the Modena, I probably would assume that if you, I mean, don't quote me on this, but if you ordered the Modena chess set, you probably would get the certificate, because I ended up getting a certificate. I remember when I purchased the 1852 Paulson series chess set, I got the same certificate. So I think that pieces of like more higher value, they're gonna all come with certificate if you order it from the House of Staunton. So let's just go ahead and take a closer look at these pieces. We're gonna go ahead and start with the king, and I'll show these pieces up close. This is considered a 4.4 inch, so very elaborate king, with the cuts, like I previously said, very similar to the cuts you would see on the Modena set. The finial here at the top is kind of like a teardrop finial with a few extra little lines. You are able to remove it, but they did not, as far as I can see, they don't have different options like in the Zagreb chess set. When I purchased the Zagreb Elite, one of my previous videos, like earlier videos, I did show you guys in the video that the finials could be replaced. Like you had the teardrop finial, but you also had the cross. I did not see that option available here, so it does come off. The finial does come off, so I'm gonna glue this finial in when I have the time, just because I do not want the finial to be coming out, since there's no other options. And the last thing you want is when you're playing, I mean, when we're playing chess, we're not grabbing the pieces by the finial, but I wouldn't want anybody else to potentially grab it by the finial like this, and then somehow it ended up coming out, and the piece would end up falling and potentially cracking or breaking or getting damaged. I wouldn't necessarily want that to be the case. So I'll go ahead and glue the finials in. It's really cool in sunlight too, when you're looking at these pieces, to be able to see how the wood reflects. I've had a lot of people comment on some of my videos that the blood rosewood has the characteristic of sort of changing the color a little bit, as far as when you shine artificial light versus when you shine like sunlight on it, kind of changes a little bit, which makes it really quite pretty. So here's the king. You do get two queens as usual in this set. The queen here is also fairly large queen. All the chess pieces are heavy, well weighted overall. The Modena set, the top portion on the queens was like really kind of like goblet-like, like a cup, whereas this just kind of has a normal emergence right out that kind of has this very typical emergence that we tend to see with a lot of queens. The top portion where you see the little spikes, they're not too sharp, which is, I like when they're not too sharp, so that way down the road you don't run into the risk of these little spikes of the crown breaking off. So I know that when some people like when they're really sharp and there's a lot of them, just because it looks more detailed. But in my opinion, I think this looks really nice overall. Bishops, actually bishops are gonna be surprisingly a little bit lighter. They're still weighted on the bottom, but just feeling wise, the bishops are gonna be a little bit lighter, on the lighter side. The cut that you see here in the front is gonna be a little bit wider than some of the other chess sets that I've shown you guys. The cut actually is wide and it extends quite far down, almost kind of in a similar fashion as the 1852 Paulson set. It had a pretty wide cut. In fact, this cut looks even wider than that 1852. So really nicely made. The top portion, that this little ball here, is kind of cut in half. So, and this area right here is pretty bulbous, but it's not to where it's too big. Like for example, the Queen's Gambit inspired just said that the top portion was a little bit too big proportionately, like to the rest of the body. The rook here has a fairly narrow top, as this tends to be one of the differentiating factors with some of the pieces. The top portion here is pretty narrow, kind of very similar to how the Modena is, except in the Modena, like when you look at the top part over here, it's kind of flat. So you have this sort of a combination of a rounded top over here, but the inner portion has been made somewhat flat, whereas in the Modena it's kind of rounded, but then in the top portion it's sort of like a little saucer, like. So this is kind of like an in-between. Fairly robust looking knight, with a broad base, and all of these pieces have, the bases are pretty broad. So this is kind of what I was alluding to in one of my previous videos, where when you're looking at the diameter of the pieces on the bottom, when they recommend, for example, this set, they recommended to have a 2.5 inch square board. In this particular case, I would agree, very much so agree, because when you're looking at how broad these bases are, you would say a 2.25 inch board probably would feel a little too small for these pieces overall. The pawns are actually quite big. These are going to be size-wise about as close to the Modena as you could probably get, without that little tiny pointy tip that you see on the Modena, but pretty large. It's kind of proportionately, I think that the pawn, these little extra bits here, these little extra circles, may or may not have been, in my opinion, it's hard to say whether or not they're going to be creating the best proportions to the pawn, but overall they're still the extra little bits of detail that make the whole set that much more elaborate, that much prettier. But as you could see, definitely even the pawn received so much attention. You have so many of these little circles here that all these circles, they take so much time to do, but I'm just really happy to see that somebody has taken the time to make something so detailed and so elaborate and elegant. And lastly, but not least, of course, we have the knight. This is how the knight looks. A very exquisite looking knight. The mane here is kind of a, definitely you could see that someone has taken the time to design and create and fabricate the mane in a very elegant way. The horse's, the knight's head kind of points down like you would see in the Zagreb, more so almost vertical, just at a slight little bit of an angle, but with quite a bit of detail overall. These little circles right here, these little holes within the mane, when you look really close into them, you could see that there's a couple of little areas where it doesn't look polished out as much, but everything else looks very much so polished. I think just because getting down in between the mane, it's probably harder for them to get the right type of instrument to really polish everything out. But it's all the other parts have been done really quite well. As you could see, large ears. The horse has the knight has this sort of a fierce look. So when you're looking at it from the front, it's just kind of like a very warlike presentation of the knight, with large, well detailed nostrils, and the teeth both on top and bottom is kind of slightly opened, um, with really quite nice shape wise and everything. Just like the Modena set, this one does unscrew on the bottom, and I'm pretty sure that the reason why they're making them in two separate pieces is just because of the way that they're made. They need to create that top portion first, probably because of the way their instruments have to cut in between all these little grooves and everything. That my best guess is that they just cannot do everything at once, so they create the bass separately. Now this one here, the little screw here that you see inside, it's a little bit on the thinner side. The Modena one, the screw was a lot thicker, and the thread here is really quite fine, a lot finer than the thread in the Modena. It doesn't make that much of a difference because you're not really even likely to have to be removing this for any particular reason, but just wanted to let you know the knights do separate from their bases. As far as the there we go, all the way, and then you tighten it. Don't over tighten it, but that's it, and then it looks very elaborate. As far as the felt on the bottom, you do have that darker green felt, which does feel a little bit softer. It does kind of separate a little bit more when compared to some of the other felts, but that separation, I think it's just because of the property of the felt. It just sort of just a softer felt overall. So that's, and then the kings here too, just, they're just gonna have the green felt. Some of the more elaborate sets, like the 1852 Paulson and some of the other high-end sets, they will say that they have that luxury leather with like a signature, but this is not a Camerata collection or anything. So I really don't know how I feel about the leather being on the backs of kings, because when you're playing, the felt feels, in my opinion, feels nicer to play than the leather. The leather tends to be a little bit like harder, and so when you're playing, for one, is that there's just going to be that distinction when you're playing the king versus when you're playing with the other pieces, which is not that much, but you will feel that when you're picking up, and more importantly, when you're sliding the king or when you're placing the king, the leather just kind of feels a little bit more firm, and as opposed to the other pieces. So that's just something that, something to take into consideration. When all the pieces have the same felt, then there's no distinction, there's no separation, which I feel it's kind of nice overall. Let's just go ahead and finish off by taking a look at the light pieces. So always the tricky part is just trying to get these pieces in focus, because as I'm trying to focus these pieces and look at them at the screen, it always seems like, yeah, they're in focus, but who knows. Anyways, so here's the king, just kind of showing to you up close, and I know we're at a slight angle as far as the sun, but hopefully you guys can see a little bit more about like where the grain is, and how the grain will look in these boxwood pieces. Just kind of take a look first and foremost at how elaborate that finial is. See all these like cuts on top. Just looks really pretty overall. Very elaborate overall. And here's your just a regular dark green felt. Boxwood is not, it doesn't seem like boxwood is all the same. If you're ordering a chess set that's, let's say, is on the like lower end of the price spectrum, if you're ordering like a $50 chess set or an $80 like an entry wooden chess set, and it says it's boxwood, it might not be the same boxwood as you would expect out of like a $2,000 chess set. That seems to be the case. I don't know, that just, I guess, different density boxwood, different boxwood trees are used for different sets, because even this one here, when I look at this Boxwood, and if I were to compare this to, say, the Queen's Gambit Boxwood, there's just so much more different. The finial comes out, but like I said, I'm just gonna go ahead and find some glue, maybe some super glue or something, and just glue them in. There's no reason for me to be taking them out. I mean, I could see maybe you would want to take them out if you want them to be stored in a particular way so that you wouldn't damage the finial. You could probably take it out and then put it in. You could, I guess you could keep the finials separate. Here, let me show you guys a little bit closer the Queen with all the spikes, as you could see here on the top. It's just a matter of preference as far as, some of the sets will have more spikes and some of the sets will have less spikes. I don't really know what governs, their decision as far as, how many of these spikes they're going to want to make. But, this particular set has less spikes. But the spikes themselves are like a little bit more blunt. So, like I said before, if I had to choose as far as, whether I wanted a Queen with more spikes or less, I would definitely want something like this. Because that way I know, if this Queen falls or something, it's less likely that any of these are going to break off just because they're like a little bit thicker. You have quite a few number of these rings here. As it kind of goes with the set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rings on top, and then if we look at the bottom here, you got these extra rings here at the bottom. So very elaborate, very pretty Queen overall. Take a look at the bishop. Large, even larger than the 1852 Paulson set. A large cut. Just like in the 1852 Paulson set, the top ball here is kind of sort of cut in half, or it's not really half, it's more like a 3/4 cut, but it's just part of the original design. Like when they started making the Staunton sets in the 18 like 50s, then they started making them with this sort of a ball cut in half. So very nice looking bishop, very nice. Lighter, a little bit on the lighter side, but it's not like it's a bishop that doesn't feel like it belongs. It really does. Every piece here looks like it's been made specifically catered to this set, but the bishop's just a little bit lighter. I'm gonna make some measurements and I'll just throw them into the details below, so if you guys are interested, you can read about the measurements as far as the weight of the pieces. Honestly, there isn't anything that I would argue is wrong with this set. Like usually I tend to have some remarks as far as there's something I don't like, but in this particular set I think everything's fairly nice. So here's the rook. Like I said, shallow top, a few extra rings here, a couple of rings here. Pretty broad body of the rook overall. It doesn't look too skinny. Like I've seen some rooks that are like really quite large here, and then the base might be big, but if it's too broad, then it's just like kind of looks too fat, more or less. But you want the rooks to be fairly well sized, proportionate to to the base and the top. You don't want it to be too big or too small. So that's the rook. Pawns, I would say, are definitely more elaborate than some of the other pawns we've seen. Like if you go back and look at the 1852 Paulson video, the pawns there are very simplistic. Like they just have the top, one ring, and then just a neck and like one base, and then the Modena chess set's kind of similar to this, where we see a lot more rings, a lot more details. So it goes to show you that even for pawns, and I mean generally pawns will receive a lot less attention than some of the other pieces, even for pawns in this particular case, like just so much attention has been given to the pawn. Whether that's a good thing, let me know in the comments below. Like, do you like more simplistic pawns? Is something like this more of something that you would prefer? Let me know. And let me know also about the chess set in general. Like, what do you guys think about it? Taking a closer look at the knight here, and I'm not really sure if you guys will pick up on like the roughness in between these little inside these little circles, but It's just ever so slightly, and I feel like probably where they just can't really get with the polishing instrument, in between here. If I was manufacturing these type of knights, then definitely I would be very careful, especially towards the end when I'm polishing everything out, to try to get in between here. Well, like, what if one of these pieces breaks off? Well, and then you just ruined your knight. I mean, it's not like you can glue these pieces back readily. So another thing about, I bought this particular set from the house of Staunton, and I was actually thinking about potentially getting the ebony wood, but I ended up getting the blood rosewood here because the ebony wasn't available. The ebony was actually $100 cheaper, but it just wasn't available. And then when I purchased this set and I went to give a link to my friend to show him that the set that I purchased, the blood rosewood wasn't available. So that's one of the things, is like some of the more elaborate chess sets like these, their availability isn't as much as you would think. So they don't have like 50 boxes on standby for everybody to buy. They almost become like limited collection editions, and you just have to wait around for a little while to see if this set will become available again. I mean, it's not like they make like a million of these sets. These are handmade, so it takes a little bit of time to make them. So hopefully, as I show you these pieces, you guys will get a better idea how they will reflect in the light. The wood here has this sort of a tendency to look almost kind of a reddish color when in direct sunlight, and then if you're playing it inside, indoors, it kind of looks a little bit more brown. It has this sort of a reflective property. Very, very pretty. Very pretty. Okay, I don't want to make this video way too long because I know that people out there are gonna get really tired of watching the video, especially when there's not a whole lot of change going on. And I know that YouTube has been changing their algorithm, I guess, within the recent year or whatever, to where if the video doesn't get watched to completion, then the YouTube algorithm gives it a certain grade based on like the percentage of the video that's been watched. So if a video's only been watched like the first 20% of it or whatever, then it ends up pushing it down to where it's not going to be as visible, or so it seems. So that's why I don't want to drag these videos out too long, but there's just a lot of cool stuff that I feel like I want to show and share with you guys. So sometimes it's just inevitable to where it ends up being so long. But so I do really appreciate everybody who's taking the time out of their day to actually view these videos. I mean, like I said before, this is really what it's all about for me, to be able to share this stuff with you guys. Very broad. I really like that broad cut of the bishop. It looks so pretty, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, I like some of the like the really skinny cuts that they make in some of these sets, but if I had to choose, I'd probably choose like a broader cut like this. It just looks nice. I mean, you can definitely tell that the amount of work, the amount of effort that took into making every little cut, and it's that much more time consuming for them to actually go through. I mean, if this is machine made, then it's made really nice, but a lot of these sets are man made, so this is really quite elaborate. I'm a sucker for details. Like, whenever I see something that has a lot of details and I can see that a lot of work went into it, I gain I have a lot of appreciation for things like that. That's why sometimes I'll go to Goodwill and I'll just browse and look at random stuff on the shelves, and I'll come across something like, even like, I'll come across a plate that's been made, and it'll have this like elaborate detail on the plate, and like, I don't need a plate, what am I gonna do with an old plate? But I'll still end up getting it, just because I feel like sometimes people miss these things out. Like, somebody at some point in time has taken a lot of time to make something like that, whether it's artwork, whether it's plates or anything, and it's just, you feel the appreciation that goes into all that effort. Yeah, I think that this is one of the more aesthetic chess sets that I've had in a while. Yeah, this is where you know, if you're gonna have a friend or you know, a chess friend come over to play, you know, you pull some of this out. You don't brew them the Keurig coffee with, you know, crappy creamer. You go in and you roast, you know, you grind the beans, and you get them the really nice stuff too, because you know, this sets a more of a exquisite atmosphere. You know, the definitely a chess set that's very much so playable, but once again, this one would be more of a collection set, and not so much like a tournament chess set. I mean, you could if you had the money and you wanted to really take something like this to a tournament, then you could. I mean, these pieces are made well. I have not yet found a storage box for this particular set. I would probably recommend like a large coffer, just once again, just because of how, like, I mean, the knights here don't look like they're going to be prone to too much breakage, but I would not throw these pieces on top of each other, just because it'll still get damaged over time and break. These are not the knights that you want to put into some you know, helter-skelter type of box. You'd want to have separation for each individual piece, in my opinion. And then the briefcase that has that 1852 Paulson set would not you would not be able to fit a knight like this into a briefcase, just because they're just a little bit more elaborate. If anybody does have a set with like really elaborate knights, let me know what you guys are using to store your chess set, and you know, how do you store it. You know, these pieces themselves, they were a little bit pricey, but it didn't cost me a whole lot. Like, I was able to use the discount that I had, a 10% off for the collectors club, which I joined a while ago, and then I found somewhere online another 15% off. So I ended up getting the refund for the square off chessboard, which was like 200 something, and basically ended up having to pay just I think about 200 extra for this particular set, which was it was fantastic. I really think that this particular set's worth the money. And if I were to recommend one set at a higher price range, this would probably be, you know, the one I would recommend. Um, I don't know, you know, this $600 chess set is probably the highest, you know, as far as price and quality. I really can't tell you guys how the like the more expensive chess sets are, because I haven't had the opportunity to review those yet. I am looking forward to getting some of the like finer chess sets, ones that are priced at like beyond $1,000, to be able to give you guys an idea as far as like how, because in my opinion, like, I haven't had chess sets that are more elaborate than this. So if there are chess sets out there that are really elaborate like this, then I hopefully, you know, sometime in the near future, I'll be able to kind of give you guys that comparison and say, yeah, these $1,000 chess sets are definitely like, you know, they'll blow this particular one out of the water. But I can't say that right now, just because I haven't had that opportunity. So, anyways, as usual, thanks guys, thanks everybody for stopping by. Thank you for taking the time to view this video, and hopefully we'll have a lot more videos coming in the future. So do stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't done so, and you know, everybody stay safe in these uncertain times, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye bye.